The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am grateful for this opportunity to intervene in this debate on an issue of high national importance. I pay my tribute to members who have participated in these discussions. This debate does credit to our democratic ethos and principles. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition has tried to paint a scary picture which has no relation with the facts of the matter. In the process, he has sought also to divide the UPA alliance in the expectation that perhaps he may succeed in toppling this government. I can assure Mr. Advani that he will have to wait for a very long time. And in any case, he will have to seek the permission of Mr. Atul Bihari Vajpayee. Mr. Speaker, sir, in this debate, there are certain basic issues. What is it that we are trying to seek in this civilian nuclear cooperation with the United States and other members of the international community? I would like to emphasize this is a program about civilian nuclear cooperation. We have never discussed with the United States or with anybody about the content and the scope of our strategic program. And I have assured the House before, and I repeat that assurance, that our strategic program will respond to our own decisions, and it will not be subjected to any international scrutiny of any. I have also assured the House before that in going forward with this program of civilian nuclear cooperation, we will do nothing which will hurt the ability of our Department of Atomic Energy to pursue research and development, to pursue the development of fast breeder reactors, and to pursue the complete three-cycle program from uranium to plutonium to thorium. And I can assure the House that I stand by that commitment. Then this question arises, why all this scaremongering? It is certainly true that the act that has been passed by the United States Congress, it has several features which are in our favor. The fact that the United States government has gone to the US government to seek a waiver for India speaks volume of India's recognition in the world community as a power to be reckoned with. There are elements in the act which we welcome. There are other elements which cause us concern. And the United States administration has assured us that they will be able to fully comply with their commitments as outlined in the July 18 statement or the March 2 statement or the separation plan. Whether this thing materializes or not will very much depend upon the content of the 123 bilateral cooperation agreement which we have to negotiate with the United States government. And I believe you can judge us from the content of that agreement when the time comes. But right now, quite frankly, it is premature to pass the type of verdict that the leader of the opposition has sought to do. So, our primary concern has been the lifting of international restrictions on international trade with India on nuclear materials, nuclear equipment, nuclear technologies, which has lasted for nearly 35 years. Our nuclear scientists have done us proud, but it is also a fact that the nuclear program, which Dr. Bhabha had envisaged as giving rise to immense power creation, power being made available out of this program, that objective has not been realized. I was a member of the Atomic Energy Commission, and it was in the 70s that we had laid down an objective of 10,000 megawatts of capacity. We are in the year 2006 and entering 2007. Our total capacity is only about 3,600 megawatts. I am not saying that nuclear power is the panacea for all our ills on the energy front, but the purpose of government intervention in the nation's affairs must be to widen the development option. And I do believe that if we have access to international trade in nuclear technologies, equipment, that will widen our development options with regard to our energy supplies. And that is the primary objective that we seek, and that is the primary objective by which we should be judged. At the same time, of course, if in the process we make compromises of a type which hurt our national interest, if in the process we undertake any foreign policy commitments which interfere with the pursuit of our national interest or the independence of our foreign policy, the House can take legitimate exception. And I would be the last one to plead to the House that we should live with an arrangement where India's foreign policy is made in Washington or any other place. Therefore, sir, I do believe a sense of proportion is necessary in dealing with a sensitive matter which has a vital bearing on not only the future of development in our country, but the future of our relations with major powers in the world. I was in Japan 3 days ago, and the amount of enthusiasm about India's development prospects that I found in the Japanese government, the Japanese industry and trade, I have never seen it before. And I say it in all humility, it is partly the result of the recognition that has come our way, that despite the fact that we were till yesterday the pariah in the nuclear world, today we have acquired a place in the nuclear order which protects our essential interests, and we must not therefore ignore the amount of transformation that has come about in the world's view of India in the process of these nuclear negotiations. So, as I was saying, the first important stage to cross has been the waiver that has been granted by the US Congress to the US President, that despite the fact that we have a nuclear weapon program, the United States will be willing to cooperate with us in the development of civilian nuclear capacities. That, I think, itself is a great advantage. We may not be considered the nuclear weapons state in the sense in which the term is defined in the NPT treaty, but for all practical purposes, we are there. And this is a recognition which today comes not only from the United States, it's Russia, France, United Kingdom, and many other countries are willing to recognize the reality that India is a nuclear weapon state. And that this nuclear weapons program will not be subjected to any extraneous, intrusive supervision or monitoring is a commitment which I gave when I spoke on many occasions in this House, and I repeat that assurance. Therefore, sir, an important stage has been reached in the process of nuclear cooperation with the United States with the passage of legislation by the US Congress with substantial bipartisan support. Advani ji ridiculed that bipartisan support. I do not minimize this importance. Mr. Advani's government was negotiating in secret with Mr. Strobe Talbot for umpteen months. They never had the courage to tell Parliament what is it that they were negotiating. I have at every stage taken Parliament into conflict. After July 18, after March 2, and at every stage Parliament has been fully kept in the picture. This was not the case with the NDA government. We do not know till this day what is it that Mr. Jaswant Singh discussed with Strobe Talbot. We have to find out from Mr. Strobe Talbot's book that Mr. Jaswant Singh had promised to deliver India's signature on the CTBT by a particular date. And I heard, if my friends in the NDA value the word of Mr. Strobe Talbot more than mine, and I think he was shown on the New Delhi television a few days ago saying he was opposed to this deal with India because it gave India too much. And he said if India were now to say that we reject it, he said that would be not in India's interest. But what is in India's interest is not something to be determined by Mr. Talbot. It is to be determined by this Parliament, this government, and we will not do anything behind the backs of our country. We will keep the country fully informed on all these matters. I was saying, sir, what has been done basically is an enabling law. In pursuance of the undertakings of the United States in July joint statement that it would seek to adjust US laws and policies to achieve full civil nuclear cooperation with India. This act is necessary for the United States to resume civil nuclear cooperation with India, and also an important step leading to the lifting of international restrictions currently applicable to India. Let me say that I appreciate the efforts made by the US administration and the bipartisan support in the US Congress, which has led to the passage of this legislation. This law has several positive features which take into account our concern. However, and I will be the last one to deny it, there are areas which continue to be a cause for concern, and we will need to discuss them with the US administration before the bilateral cooperation agreement can be finalized. What has been done was to enable the US administration to enter into negotiations with us. The negotiations with India have yet to begin, and the House has my assurance that the promises, the commitments that I made when I spoke in the House on earlier occasions, those will be our guidelines for these negotiations. Sir, the passage of the legislation enables the US administration to follow up on another commitment made by US in the July 18 statement, that is approaching its international partners, particularly in the nuclear suppliers group, to lift restrictions to allow full civil nuclear cooperation with India. We will seek to ensure that the nuclear suppliers group takes action to permit full civil nuclear cooperation with India in terms acceptable to us. India is interested in long-term, stable and predictable cooperation in civil nuclear energy with the United States and other members of the international community. Such a partnership with the United States can be facilitated if the legislation, its scope, content and implementation were to strengthen the hands of the administration to fulfill all the commitments agreed to by the United States in the July 18 joint statement and the March 2 separation plan. On the other hand, this objective can be hindered by extraneous issues that were not part of the understandings in the July 18 joint statement and the March 2 separation plan. India will find it difficult to and cannot accept any such condition beyond those already agreed to in the understandings with the United States. I have mentioned earlier also, our strategic program was outside the discussions that led to July 18 joint statement. There was no discussion on details of our strategic program, which culminated in the March 2 understanding. Our strategic program will not be subject to external scrutiny or interference of any kind. So Advaniji does not have to worry about the future of nuclear sovereignty. Safeguarding the autonomy of the strategic program is a solemn duty of this government. Nothing will be done that will compromise, dilute, or cast a shadow on India's full autonomy in the management of its security and national interests. And I repeat, no legislation of a foreign country can take away from us our sovereign right to conduct foreign relations, be it with Iran or with other countries, solely in accordance with our national interests. The US, for its part, has assured us that the legislations as passed by the US Congress will enable it to fulfill all its commitments vis-à-vis the July 18 joint statement and the March 2 separation plan. We feel clarifications are necessary because there are areas in the Act which cause us concern. Therefore, clarifications are necessary and will be sought from the US on how this will be done. Mr. Speaker, sir, international negotiations are a complex process. We recognize that the outcomes are not entirely predictable, nor always under our control. But I do recognize and do state that compromises, if any, cannot violate basic principles. I believe that any calculation of risks and opportunities will need to be done in a reasoned and transparent manner but evidently we cannot agree to anything that is not consistent with our vital national interest, including protecting the autonomy of our strategic program, maintaining the integrity of the three-stage nuclear power program, and safeguarding indigenous R&D, including the fast breeder program. This will be our underlying approach, and I'm replying to Dr. Paul, that this will be the underlying approach when we negotiate the bilateral 123 agreement, which will form the basis of our civil nuclear cooperation. Sir, looking back, though the July 18 joint statement and the March 2 separation plan involved complex issues, I believe we were able to achieve outcomes that in no way compromise India's interests. In fact, there was wide public support when the issues were fully explained. This has been made possible using innovative and creative approaches to these complex issues. There is, I believe, a large measure of support within the country in favor of breaking out of our isolation and in joining the international mainstream in a manner that secures for India full civil nuclear cooperation with the international community while protecting our strategic program and maintaining the integrity of our three-stage program and indigenous R&D. This is the objective set out as far as the bilateral nuclear agreement is concerned. Parliament, sir, has my solemn assurance that while the government will make every effort so that the vision of the July statement becomes a reality, this objective will not be achieved at the cost of our vital national interest. Clearly, difficult negotiations lie ahead. Our broad approach and expectations of these negotiations are a matter of public record. My August 17, 2006 statement dwelled at length on how India perceives the implementation of the July statement and the March separation plan. I stand by the commitment that I have made to Parliament.
Thank you. Sri Devendra.